everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tea with Tara. Today's guest should look very familiar to you, especially if you ever watched Little House on the Prairie. Wendi Lou Lee played Baby Grace, the Ingalls' youngest child. So today she's here to talk about her amazing career as an actress, her memories of Little House, and her new book, because she is not only an actress, she is a speaker and an author. And her new book, Red Tail Feathers, comes out August 13th. And we're going to learn all about the book and all about her career. So please stick around, and we'll be right back with Wendi Lou Lee. Hi, welcome back to Tea with Tara, and I am now joined by Wendi Lou Lee, who played Baby Grace on Little House on the Prairie. Wendi, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you. I'm glad to come.
I'm so glad to be able to talk to you because Little House was really one of my favorite shows growing up. I mean, I think you have to be living under a rock not to know what the show is and how much it meant to everybody in our country, and still does. So I just want to start with the beginning of your career, your acting career. How did you get into acting, and did you have any family who were involved in acting?
No family in acting. No, my mom was not a stage mom at all. She did not have headshots of her 6-month-old babies. It was not even on the radar. But my grandmother was friends with Kent and Sue McCrae. So Kent was the executive producer. Sue was the casting director. So they were friends. They played bridge together. So they were, hanging out one day and talking about Little House. And Sue was saying how she couldn't find a baby Grace and that they needed twin girls that were this old with blonde hair and blue eyes. And my grandmother was like, Sue, hello, what about my granddaughters? And so that is really how it happened. She grabbed a picture of us where we were like in our diapers on a blanket at the park, and they showed the picture to, Kent and to Michael and said, okay, bring him in and let's just meet him and see what happens. And so that was it. We pretty much got hired on the spot. My mom took us in to meet Michael Landon. He got down on the floor with us and played with us for a few minutes. And then he said, I think these are my girls. And my mom was like, okay. And she, in a little bit of a sense, thought, okay, maybe we're just going to like be an extra for a couple episodes or something. You don't realize like how much of a role can a 6-month-old baby play.
Right.
And then it slowly was revealed that, oh my goodness, like this is like 4 years. Like this was like my whole toddler growing up, from the time you were a baby until kindergarten, which is it's a big chunk. So yeah, that's really what happened. Totally, like, some people might say it's a fluke. I kind of just say it was the grace of God, but
Yeah, definitely. And how old were you when you began on Little House?
our first episode filming, we were 8 months old, but that happened at about 6 months old. It takes a little bit to get,
Right.
Working.
Now, I know, as you just said, you were very young on Little House, and I know that I was wondering what kind of memories that you might have from the show, because now I have home movies that I of me as a baby, and I've seen them so many times that sometimes I'm not sure if I actually remember it or if it's just been ingrained in my brain because I've seen them so many times. So do you have any memories of the show and the cast members?
Yes, that's exactly. I talk about this in my book. I have this like threefold memories. Okay. It's like I was really there, and there were some things that I remember that were not on camera, and that my mom doesn't even remember. And then there's these stories for, my whole life about the time that we did this and the time that we did that and the time that we did that. And then also just watching the show for 40 years. It's like, I, that's the only childhood, visual thing that we have. We didn't have a video camera when we were little, but we have Little House. So we actually know like, little tiny snippets, but yeah, it's kind of a mixture of all three of those things. And there was one time I was telling my mom about something and she goes, I don't remember that. And I was like, I clearly remember that. And she's like, well, that must be one of your memories. So
What was it like to work with Michael Landon? And I'm sure he was really, I've heard so many wonderful stories about him. Do you remember anything about him?
Yes, Michael Landon was very calm, especially with us. Very calm and very like settling. Um, Now, with the other kids, he was funny and he was a jokester and a prankster, but I don't think we were old enough for that. You know what I mean? He was very, very calm. And when we would, there's a couple times where he would just come down to our level and put his arms around us. And we have this picture of when we're, I think it's season 8. It's after the tornado episode, Days of Sunshine, Days of Sorrow. And there's this picture that my mom took of us, and it's like one of my favorite pictures. But we just get in his arms and he's got us. And the picture that most people see on my website that I send out is this great picture. We're all looking at the camera. But there's another picture that I don't really send out. It's kind of just a special picture that I keep to myself. And we are all snuggled up in his arms, like just all snuggled up. And you can just see this safety that we felt in his arms. Like he was just, that's all I can say. Just
Like a
warm,
father figure.
caring, and a father figure. Yes.
Now, the show has never been off the air. I don't think it's ever been off the air since it debuted. And it's become so iconic. Why do you think, even today, Little House on the Prairie still resonates with fans?
I just really think it's the family values, the just this idea of a family coming together in really like hard times. And when you're in hard times, so many things come out of that. Faith, family, neighbors, just love for each other, bending over backwards for each other. That's just this universal theme of really, it's like loving God and loving others. I
Yeah.
think it's something that people can't not be drawn to.
And we're in desperate need of that today, especially, I think.
Yeah.
Now, did you continue to act once the show was over?
Well, we tried. The very first audition that we had after Little House was for McDonald's. Okay. Now, we didn't get the role because when the producer showed us a picture of Ronald McDonald, we didn't know who it was. We had never eaten at McDonald's. We didn't know what a Happy Meal was.
You're
And
coming
so
off the prairie, right?
I know that wasn't our life, you know? And so, I mean, we were only 4 years old. So, McDonald's is sometimes a little older. Well, at least in our house, it was. We didn't go out for fast food. And so we didn't get the part. But we did get the next part, which was probably at least a year later. It took us a while to get another audition, but it was for a bank, and it was for a bank in Texas, Bank of Texas, I believe it was called. And it was for their telephone banking feature. Remember when that was new?
Yes.
This was a commercial about that. And that was our first and last commercial because we had a ball. We got to dress up like these little cowgirls, and there was a set of twin boys. It was dressed up with little headdresses and phony bows and arrows. And we were like brother and sister, like driving our mom crazy in the kitchen. And that was kind of setting the whole mood. And then they couldn't hear the telephone banking feature or something. And it panned over to me and one of the little boys tied back to back with a lollipop in our mouths to keep us quiet so the mom could do her telephone banking. I mean, so random. And I wish I could find that commercial. And I have a couple people that are like, I'm going to find it, and they haven't found it yet. So I don't know if it's politically correct anymore.
Right.
So maybe that's why, but
Maybe.
it was a totally different experience for us because Little House was so not just family friendly, but child actor friendly. I mean, the cast was like half kids, like people they had homework and they had to go home for dinner. Like the whole place on Little House just revolved around these children and how to make it a good place for kids to grow up. And so then you get on a, a 1 day, 10-hour shoot for a commercial. And it's like, is this what this is like? And my mom was like, I am not doing this. And she was also pregnant with my little sister. And so there was this moment where she had to make a decision to say, is this like the path that I want not just Bren and Wendi to go on, but like our family? Because it wasn't just a decision for us. It was a decision for the whole family. And yeah, she said, I don't think so. And so we were done. And then we went to kindergarten.
And it's hard, I guess, I mean, I've never been an actor, but I imagine that it's really hard to have children in the business sometimes, in Hollywood, especially.
Yeah, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of rejection, and rejection for a kid that young, it's hard, it's like, how do you get them to keep going and not be like, what's wrong with me? Like, how come they don't like me? That was like after the McDonald's when we were like, what did we do wrong? Do they not like us? And my mom's like, this is awful. Like, how do I tell my kids that, like, well, you have to know who Ronald McDonald is and you don't, so they don't like you. It's like, it's just it's a strange business for children, especially very young children, I think,
Right.
because they just don't really understand,
Yeah.
the
As you
process.
started, right. And as you started to get older and you started going to school and high school and all that, how did you reflect back on your time on Little House on the Prairie? I mean, what did it mean to you? What does it mean to you now to have been part of such an iconic, beloved show?
Well, I think when we were growing up, it was kind of like it wasn't a secret, but it kind of felt a little bit like a secret, because it's kind of strange to walk into some place and say, oh, by the way, I was Baby Grace on Little House on the Prairie. It's not something that you do. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of strange. And so, yeah, it was this weird kind of secret a little bit. And I remember we were in 6th grade and we had just gone to visit Michael on the set of Highway to Heaven. And we came home with these crew jackets, these bright pink crew jackets that said Highway to Heaven on the back. And they were signed by Michael. And we were like, oh my gosh, these are so cool. And we wore them to like the first day of school. And I remember getting so much attention. And then it kind of was out, but then nobody really talked about it. It was just a strange, I don't know. I don't really know why. Yeah, people knew, oh yeah, they were the twins were on Little House, but it wasn't like a big deal.
Right.
We lived in a little town that was, I don't know, we were just normal
We're just
kids.
the kids in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah, we were just the kids in the neighborhood. So it wasn't, I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question.
Now, with the exception of Michael Landon, did you keep in touch with the rest of the cast? And if not, what was it like when you first, because I know you do the Little House reunions, what was it like the first time you saw all your cast members as an adult?
Yes, we did not keep in contact with really any of the cast. We saw Michael once. So we were on the show and then we didn't see him for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. And really it was just my grandmother hooked up with Sue McCrae and said, hey, is there any way that the girls can come see Michael? And they totally arranged it. And it was super fun. But we didn't have, even then, we didn't really have contact with him besides that one little visit. So we didn't have contact with anybody. And it actually ended up being like 23 years later, I was 28 and pregnant when we got an invitation to go to a Little House reunion luncheon at the Hollywood racetrack to see some Little House people. And we were like, this is so weird. So we were obviously super nervous and we hadn't seen anybody besides Michael that, 1 day for 1 hour or whatever. And so, yeah, it was pretty incredible. the first thing that happened is we walked in, and Allison Arngrim, who's Nellie, she stood up and she said, "Goodness gracious, baby Grace is having a baby." And everyone was like, "Oh my gosh."
Well, that was a good icebreaker.
Yeah, it was crazy. Couldn't believe it. Yeah, so we got to see Karen Grassley, we got to see Lindsay and Sydney, and and there are some people we hadn't even met before. I got to see Charlotte Stewart, and we had never even been on screen at the same time. Charlotte
Oh,
was
right.
Miss Beadle, so she played the first 4 seasons, and we were the second 4 seasons. So we never had met until that day, and now she's like one of my best friends. Like everywhere we go, we like share a hotel room. Like her husband sends me coffee. Like she's I don't even know what it would be like without having Charlotte in my life. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's incredible. And now going to events, like I can't tell you, like I don't know how many events this year, like 10, 15 events, maybe at least once or twice a month. And are we going somewhere with the cast? So it's like a dream.
It's amazing that you can still, reconnect and just, pick up where you left off, kind of.
Yeah.
So at what point, I want to shift gears a little bit from acting, because of course you said you didn't stay as an actress, but what point did you decide, I want to be a writer or a storyteller, as you call yourself?
Yes, I think I am more of a storyteller. Yes. Well, it all started after I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So in 2015, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and I decided, I don't know if who have gone through something like this will totally identify with this, but when something like that happens and you have that kind of news, all of a sudden there are 4 million people that want to talk to you on the phone and ask the story. And so you're like really overwhelmed with, every aunt, every uncle, every friend, every family member, and it's just really overwhelming. And then they want to know the update every other day. And so you kind of are like, I don't know how to keep up with this. And so I decided to just start a blog to just update every day. And I didn't know how this was going to go. And so I just thought, well, if this doesn't go so well, then this is really like my almost like diary of this experience. And so that was how it started. But at my 3-month follow-up appointment, I kind of just felt this, I don't know, urging to write a book. And I just decided that I would just start. And so that was really how it happened. Yes, that was how I started writing. I had never written anything before besides a term paper in college and a thank you note. Like I just didn't write anything. So this was all new to me.
Now, did you have a special writing routine? Any special places where you like to write, or did you keep a journal at all?
No, I was never a journaler, but I just started, um, you know, a lot of it was during my surgery, during my recovery. I was realizing that I had so many, like pain points, just pain and trauma from my past that I had never really dealt with. And so it was me kind of like reliving these stories and trying to make sense out of them. And that was really what it was. So I would just think in my mind, like, oh, I'm going to write about that. And I would just write the story almost like I was reliving it, like it was a movie on the screen. And then after I would tell the whole story, the end part was almost like a little bit like a journal. Like, how do I make sense of this? How can I work through this and be okay with the pain and the trauma in my life? And what does it mean for me? What does it teach me? How can I encourage others who maybe went through the same thing? So that is really the writing process that I went through.
So now the first book is a devotional. Is that based on your time on Little House?
Actually, the devotional is based on quotes from the show. So every little devotion is based on a quote that someone said in a particular episode. And then there is a little story from my life. It could have been when I was on the show. It could have been when I was a teenager. It could have been when I was a mom, whatever the quote relates to. And then it has, you know, a little wrap up, a little application with a little Bible verse. So that is really based on the show itself. And the quotes are what guide the writing. It wasn't a free write where I get to write wherever I want to. That is really what my memoir is all about, is really like, this is my story. So, you know, from beginning to now. So I think that, yeah.
So did you have any favorite writers growing up, or anybody that you looked to when you were writing your books? Anyone who gave you inspiration?
I was not a writer or a reader. I was nothing. That sounds so ridiculous that I would even say that. I don't remember reading. I remember reading Charlotte's Web, and I remember reading The Hobbit. That is the only books I even remember reading when I was a kid. Like, I just wasn't a reader. I wasn't a writer. I was more interested in going outside and playing. So I'm kind of a atypical writer.
Right.
Not typical writer. Yeah, though you're not supposed to say that as a writer, but that's the truth.
It's the truth, right? So your new book is called Red Tail Feathers, which, by the way, is a great title. Now, did you come up with that title, or was that your publisher's idea?
Actually, my husband did.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. My
And
husband
this
did.
and this book really it's your memoir, but it also deals with faith. Now, were you always a faith-based person, or did your faith come to you later in life?
I was always a person of faith. I grew up, my family, we were just a church going, praying kind of people. So yes, no, I've always been a person of faith, but I will say that as my life has gone on, my faith has grown stronger and deeper. You know, every trial that you go through, I think you learn to rely on someone else. And that for me was God. So yeah, definitely have been a believer forever. So
How did your faith, though, how did it increase, and how did it play a part in your outlook when you were faced with your serious medical condition, which was the brain tumor?
um well, I think God just gave me this peace before my surgery. And I, it's hard to explain, you know, when you get that peace, but when you do, and you know that God has a plan, um, you can just walk confidently into the future and know that whatever happens, it's okay. And that was really what happened for me. Um, and then I woke up from surgery and I just had this like exhilarating feeling that God had something more for me to do, because if he didn't take me, which I was like, okay, well, if this happens, my husband's going to have a handful, but with those kids, but I'm okay. You know what I mean? And so, um, yeah, I knew that he had something for me to do. And really, that time has birthed this kind of season for me of ministering to Little House fans and praying for them and hanging out with them and encouraging them. So I really feel like it's a God-given opportunity, blessing, ministry, whatever you want to call it. It is definitely what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. So,
And faith definitely, it really requires a lot of action. You know, if faith is an action, the dictionary lists faith as a noun, but I've always thought of it more as a verb, because it's not just something you could say, well, yeah, I have a belief. You know, it takes action to be faithful. Don't you agree?
yes, yes, it does. It is an action. I agree.
And did you have any hesitation about writing this memoir? Was there ever a moment where you thought, you know, I'm a little bit hesitant about bearing my soul? Because, you know, writing a memoir, and especially as a faith-based memoir, it requires a lot of self-reflection.
Yeah, I didn't really have much hesitation. But when I got that first copy in the mail, I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I can't go back now. And there's just it is very much bearing my soul. I don't really hold much back. There's not much I don't tell in that book. And even my husband's like, well, I guess it's on paper now. And there's a lot of stuff about him and about my kids and about, I'm not a super like private person, obviously. You don't write a memoir if you were a private person at all. So yeah, but it's really me just looking back at the chapters of my life and trying to see grace in every single one and encouraging other people to see grace too, and to see it in a different way than maybe that they've ever thought of grace before.
And did you learn anything more about yourself when you were writing this? Because I'm a writer also, and when I'm writing, it's very cathartic. And sometimes, I write without even really paying attention to what I'm saying. It just kind of comes out. And then you look at what you've written and you think, God, is that how I really feel? I didn't realize before my own emotions sometimes.
Yeah, I say it was like one big therapy session, like a 7-year therapy session of like just like making peace with my past and making peace with the hurt and the abandonment and all those things that we all have. Like we all have stuff that's not perfect in our lives, and sometimes we try to hide those things, and sometimes it's really healing to just put it out on the table and say, yeah, this stuff's hard, and um maybe God did this for a reason. Maybe God shaped my life so that I would have this story to share.
And did you draw on the lessons or off the lessons from Little House? Because as you said, Little House dealt so much with faith and family and love and forgiveness. Did you draw on any of those lessons in your new book?
Not really, because the devotional was so it really needed to be different than that. But I do talk about Little House in the book. The first couple chapters are, getting the job and the memories and the commercial and meeting the cast again. So there is a lot of that. And obviously, um, I talk a lot about Little House and Grace, obviously, baby Grace. It's just this, whatever. But I wouldn't say that it's centered on the lessons specifically of Little House. It's really what God taught me in my life. So, yeah.
So we're at a pivotal moment right now in our country where faith is sometimes on the back burner. And I was just wondering what advice you have for people who are struggling with their faith, because how do we keep God present?
Hmm.
And
How do we keep
do you have any routines to exercise your faith each day? Do you read devotionals or do you go to the Bible?
Oh, yes, I do. I spend every morning with my coffee and my Bible, my devotional, and I do that every morning. And then as soon as I'm done with that, I take what I've learned or what something that God has revealed to me, and I encourage my Little House people with it. I have a group on Facebook called Big Time Grace, and there's like almost 900 people in the group. And every day I say, I just read in Luke 11 how ... And so just encouraging them and showing them that God is always present. He's always present. But sometimes we don't have the eyes to see him. And so we need to open up our eyes and know that God is everywhere. His grace is all around us if we can just open our eyes to see it.
Yeah, and especially, I wrote a book also called Dreaming Through the Eyes of God. And a lot of people I noticed that I talked with said, sometimes it's really hard to have faith in times of pain and adversity. If something's going wrong in your life, it's really hard to say, well, where is God in all of this? And how do I keep my faith during all of these terrible things that are happening?
Yes, but I will say, how can you get through it without God? I honestly
Exactly.
don't know. I can't imagine going through, especially the hard times in my life without God. I mean, the easy times, sometimes I forget about God when life's easy.
Right.
But when life's hard, I am like, I need you, God. I don't think I can get through this, So, um, I think maybe there's maybe this tendency for us to, when something's not going well, is we want to like blame someone. And if we have no one to blame, well, then maybe we're just going to blame God.
Right.
But I think over and over again, I've seen in my life, when I look back at the hard times of my life, I see God just so strong for me and always revealing, teaching me something. Hindsight is 2020. But when you look back at your life and you see the faithfulness of God, that's what keeps you clinging to him for the future. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I totally agree, because when things are going easy, it is easy to forget, God is there. Sometimes I think, you wonder if he's testing you, not in a bad way, but, to remind you like, hey, there's someone bigger than you. You need to lean on me. And I've
Yeah.
never dealt with any medical issues, but I lost my mom when I was 12 years old. She died of pancreatic cancer. So, and then my father died when I was 32. And I can't imagine. That's what I write also in my own book. I can't imagine trying to get through that without God and just trying to be there on my own and do it all, because it's just impossible.
Yeah, I agree.
So what's next for you? What's next for Wendi Lou Lee, with your new books, especially your new book, Red Tail Feathers? Are you going on a book tour?
Um, well, it's not a formal book tour, but there are so many events from now until the end of the year that it's becoming a book tour. So, yes, my book releases in like a week or so, a week and a couple days. And then I'm headed to Kentucky, and then I'm going to Oklahoma, and then I'm going to a Northern California event. I'm going to be in Indiana. I'm going to be in Illinois, and then I'm going to be in Arkansas, and then Texas. So, yes, we're having a book tour.
Yeah, will you be doing any more Little House appearances as well?
Yes, most of those are Little House appearances.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
there's a couple in there that are at churches or something, but most of those are actually Little House events with the cast. So,
Oh,
yeah,
great. So
yeah,
that's
I think
exciting. You coming to Pennsylvania anytime soon? I would love to meet all of you in person.
I don't think there's one planned yet, but 2024 is the 50th anniversary of Little House airing, and so you never know.
You need a big tour for that.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So now tell everyone where they could find your books and where they could find out information about you. I know you're on Facebook.
Yes, my books are, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever books are sold. If you have a little bookstore and you want them to carry it, just go up and ask them and they will. So you can order, any bookstore can order it. I also have an Etsy store where I do like signed copies. So that will be after the release on the 13th. But you can find me at my website, wendyloulee.com. And I'm also on Facebook. Wendi Lou Lee as Baby Grace is my page. So yeah, come hang out with me. I do a weekly live video on Tuesday mornings. And yeah, I'm also on Instagram at Wendi Lou Lee. It's pretty easy. Yeah.
So Wendi, thank you so much for being on Tea with Tara. I'm so happy that you came on to talk about your new book, Red Tail Feathers and a Prairie Devotional. And I wish you the most success with your new book. And I'm really glad you came on today to talk also about your faith, because I think that's so important. And we need more people like you to come out and actually speak about the faith, because so many people, I think, these days are a little afraid to say the word faith.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.